Welcome to our webinar, Student Disability Services Accommodations. We are excited to have all of you joining us today. My name is Connie Watson with the Parent and Family Relations Office, and joining me today is Kimberly Renlisbacher from Student Disability Services here on campus. This webinar is part of our Red Raider Family Webinar Series, where we share information on topics of interest to parents, families, and supporters of our students. We hope this webinar will help you better understand how your Red Raider can access accommodations through student disability services. We plan to keep this webinar to about 30 minutes or so. And if there's time at the end, we'll open it up for questions using the Zoom Q&A feature. In the meantime, feel free to go ahead and type your questions in the Zoom Q&A feature throughout the presentation. We have folks behind the scenes who can help answer your questions. We are recording this session and posting it to our website so you can review it later or share with others. We will also email the recording link to the email that you used when you registered for this webinar. So let's begin. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kim. Here you go, Kim.
Hello, thank you. We'll get the next slide on. All right. Please make sure your microphones are muted. And as Connie said, type any questions into the Q&A chat. This is recorded, so if you aren't able to stay for the entire meeting, please view the recording. And please remember that this is a public forum, so please do not share any personal information or specific disability information about your student or child in accordance with the HIPAA and the FERPA guidelines. Next. Oh, there we go. All right. So I am Kim Renlisbacher. I am an administrator and a case manager at Student Disability Services. Along with me today, who will be kind of monitoring the Q&A, we have Abby Main. She's our program director and a case manager, and Stephanie Nelson, who is an assistant director and also a case manager. So thank you, ladies, for being on and answering questions. So our learning outcomes for today, we are going to talk about what the ADA and Section 504 are. Those are the laws that kind of govern accommodations. We are going to go over an overview of the Student Disability Services Office. We're going to talk about what accommodations are, and then we will leave time for a question and answer. So jumping right on in with some fast facts, these are from the NCES, so the National Center for Educational Statistics, and these are from 2019 and 2020. Those are the most recent stats that we have. 21% of undergraduates and 11% of post-bac students reported having disabilities. However, only a third of those students who have those disabilities actually registered for accommodations in higher education. So a lot of students that have disabilities don't always seek accommodations at the higher education level, or they don't even know that accommodations are available and that they exist at the higher ed level. That's why it's so important to get that word out and to let families and students know that we are here and we are ready to help. The main law that we are governed under is the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. It is a federal rights and civil rights law designed for equal opportunity and equal access. So it ensures that all students with disabilities are able to access all opportunities just like any other student. So that includes participation in programs and services and all activities that are offered to any program that receives federal financial assistance, which Texas Tech is. The other law that we are kind of under is the Section 504 Rehabilitation Act. That is a part of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which protects individuals from discrimination. So a lot of you might be familiar with the 504 and how it applies to K-12. K-12 is under Subpart D, which requires those 504 plans that are developed so that students can get accommodations in K-12 education. We in the higher ed realm are under Subpart E, which applies to the post-secondary schools and ensures that the students have the same opportunity as the non-disabled peers. So very similar wording between the 504 and the ADA. Ultimately, it's access that we're seeking. Under this subpart E, it mandates the institution who received that federal funding cannot discriminate and ensures equal access for programs and services, which includes accommodations and academic adjustments, housing, financial assistance, and non-academic activities. So unlike the K-12, 504 in the post-secondary setting focuses on access, while the student success is up to their own responsibility. So that is a very big change from K-12 to higher education, where a lot of those accommodations in K-12 kind of helped with that success, whereas accommodations in at the collegiate level are going to focus on access. So in K-12, what a lot of students receive services under is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. And that's where those individualized education plans, or IEPs, come into play. And so the IDA ensures the free appropriate public education, or FAPE as we call it, to eligible students with disabilities through those individualized education plans. That is the special education services in K-12. And so that's where those individualized education plans, those FIE, the full individual evaluations, come in. The No Child Left Behind, the least restrictive environment. A lot of these are probably sounding familiar to everyone. Those individualized education plans do not transfer to higher education. However, we do accept those plans as documentation, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. So this is just kind of a quick overview chart of what I just covered with the IDEA, the Section 504, and the ADA. Why is this important? Because those laws are very different, which means that services are going to be very different. Accommodations that students receive in high school, elementary, junior high, and high school are not going to look the same as they are in college. And some of those things that they've received in high school might be up to them now, and we'll talk about some of that. This is just a really quick overview. Feel free to look over it after the presentation. All right, so moving on to our office and Student Disability Services, students have to apply for services through our office. And so to do that, any student who needs accommodations due to a disability is going to fill out the application found on our website. And this application includes a questionnaire that prompts students to give a little bit of information. What is their learning style? What accommodations have they used before? What accommodations do they feel like they need here at Texas Tech? And then before submitting the application, the student's going to be prompted to submit documentation. That documentation commonly is going to be the student's 504 plan or the student's IEP plan from high school, but it can also be documentation from a treating physician or a mental health counselor or anything like that. We have those documentation guidelines on our website. But once the student applies, they submit that application, they are assigned to a case manager. And that case manager is going to reach out via their TTU email. So it's important that those students continuously check that email after they've applied. And we are going to set up what's called an intake meeting with a student. And during that intake meeting, we are going to talk about accommodations that they're eligible for, what that process looks like, and we'll go through the process that we go over with the students here in a second, and how to utilize those accommodations each semester. And so the responsibility shifts from the parents to the students in higher education. The students are now responsible for making sure that they have those accommodations and that they are in place each semester. So this is where you find the link to the application. It is right under Quick Links, Apply to Student Disability Services. No, next, yep, perfect. All right, so we kind of touched on documentation. Morgan is dropping a lot of links in the chat for y'all to access, but that could be the 504 plan, the IEP plan. If your student was on an IEP, the most recent FIE full individual evaluation is always super helpful. It could be medical documentation, or it could be housing/dining specific documentation if a student is seeking a housing accommodation or anything like that. All right, so this is our accommodations process. So, like I said, we're going to email the student to have the intake meeting, and we review this process with the students during the intake meeting. So, each semester, students are responsible for completing steps 2 through 6 on this chart. So, the first thing that students are going to do each semester is that they're going to request their accommodations. To be able to do this, the students have to have had that intake meeting with a case manager to discuss those accommodations. So each semester, the students are going to go onto our website and request their letter of accommodation. We go through the step-by-step process of how to do that with the students, but we also have a video on our website that shows students how to do that. So after students request their accommodations on our website, they are going to email their instructors to set up a time to meet with them and discuss those accommodations. Some of our accommodations might look a little bit different from professor to professor, things like supplemental notes. One professor might give the PowerPoint presentation as the notes. One might have a volunteer note taker and someone takes notes for them. And they get a copy of that other student's notes. Some professors might give a fill in the blank note packet. So there's some accommodations, there's some flexibility with that. And so the students have to meet with their instructors and discuss their accommodations. We encourage students to meet face to face with their instructors. And then after that meeting with their instructors have a week to put those accommodations in place. During that week, ideally, is when students will schedule their exams with the academic testing services. And we go step by step on how to do that as well. There's also a video on our website showing how to do that. And so after that week period, then the student should start receiving their accommodations. After that week, if the students have any issues, we ask that they speak with their instructor. Um, sometimes this could be super easy. It could just be a quick email to the instructor. Hey, Professor Brown, I didn't receive my supplemental notes from Monday's class. Can you email those to me? Something quick like that. And then if there's any issues or problems or questions, then they are going to come to us as their case manager with any issues or if they need help communicating with the instructors or they're not quite sure what to say or how to say it, they can come to us for that support. All right, other services that we offer here at Student Disability Services. We do have drop-in tutoring for students who are registered with our office. And so with the drop-in tutoring, we post that on our website each semester. Students will just check in at the front and they'll get buzzed into our computer lab and they can utilize our drop-in tutors. Our drop-in tutors do cover specific information for like subject information, but they are also trained to help with executive functioning skills, which are things like organization, looking at the syllabus and coming up with a schedule, things like that. Oh, that's okay. All right. And then we do have scholarships available as well. That is for students registered with Student Disability Services. And so scholarships open in October and they close in January. We send reminders to students who are registered with our office that those scholarships are open. They are under the general scholarships website, Scholarship Universe with the university. We do offer student workshops. And we have lots of other like activities and things like that for the students. These workshops, we can meet one-on-one with the students or we can get a group together and they focus on skills like note-taking or making a schedule, keeping a planner, things like that. CLASS, CLASS, is Collegiate Level Autism Support Services. This is a new service that we offer. This is our second year offering this. It is a 7-week program for students who have autism spectrum disorders. And during those 7 weeks, it is an intensive kind of how to be a college student is the basic premise of the class. We work on things like communication, how to live with a roommate, walking schedules. We do a lot of things in those 7 weeks and we work on those skills that we feel like students need. We kind of focus in on those. So the application is closed for this year. We are full, but we will open that up for next year. It is for first year students. So if you have any friends or family friends that might fall into that category, definitely send them to our website for that. The Technique Center is a fee-for-service tutoring system for students who have learning disabilities, autism spectrum disorders, and ADD or ADHD. And with the Technique Center, students receive 3 to 5 hours, typically 5 hours of one-on-one tutoring each week. And then they have a 30-minute check-in with a case manager. So like I said, it is a fee-for-service tutoring system. It is a fee. And so if you want more information on that, you can find the Technique Center website. It is linked to our website as well, or Connie's dropping that. She's amazing. Thank you, Connie. Or thank you, Morgan. Morgan is dropping those links. The Technique Center is a great service that is unique to Texas Tech. Like I said, we do offer some student events. We have a create and paint for students the first Friday of every month, and then we have a huge art show the first Friday in October. With the First Friday Art Trail in Lubbock, and we raise money for scholarships. We have Independent Study Day events, open houses, lots of events there. Of course, we help with case management. And so if students come in and they're like, I'm not quite sure who to turn to or who I need to ask for help with this, we're here to help with that. And then if any students are having any issues, receiving accommodations or they're not receiving their accommodations like they should, that's what we're here to kind of help mediate that. We do provide sign language interpreters. We have a few full-time and a few part-time sign language interpreters. We do professional development just like this, but we also help train faculty and staff on campus as well about our services and accommodations. And then we have a lot of partnerships on campus. We work very closely with housing and the Burkhart Center. They have a program for students on the spectrum as well. It's called CASE. We work closely with the Dean of Students to make sure that we are providing supports to our students. Conduct, admissions, former foster youth, military and veteran programs. We work very closely with a lot of departments on campus to make sure that our students are receiving the supports that they need. Next, sorry, Connie, thank you. All right. So this is not an exhaustive list by any way, shape, or form, but these are just some of the types of disabilities that we help service. ADD, ADHD, learning disabilities, things like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, or specific learning disabilities in reading, math, writing. Chronic illnesses, that would be a whole list in and of itself. So lots of chronic illnesses, but we also do help with temporary illnesses as well, things like concussions or broken arms, broken hands, hearing impairments, of course, mobility impairment, psychological, that's a whole list as well. There's a DSM-5 book just for those. Visual impairments, traumatic brain injuries, autism spectrum disorders, and others, things like speech impairments, genetic disorders. There's a laundry list of what could qualify as a disability. So if you ever have any question about that, just let us know. All right, so what is an accommodation? An accommodation ensures that students can fully access all aspects of the course and education, and accommodations must be reasonable and appropriate and cannot fundamentally alter course and program standards. An example I give here is imagine a student that's going in for nursing, and they have to perform putting an IV in. There's no other alternative to being able to put an IV in other than putting an IV in. And so if that individual is not able to perform that task, they would not be, we call it otherwise qualified to be able to do that. So, if they're able to do that with an accommodation, then that might be appropriate, but there's no other way to perform that task than to do that. So it is, accommodations are for access, and we cannot fundamentally alter those standards and program requirements. I don't want to get too far into the weeds with that, but accommodations cannot reduce assignments. Students are expected to do all of the assignments as outlined in each course syllabus in each course. They cannot alter the course material unless access is an issue. Of course, if we had like a visually impaired student who couldn't access, an assignment, then we would alter that for them. But if students are expected to do 20 questions of the homework, we can't alter that to 10 questions. It would still be 20 questions. That is a common accommodation that is offered to a lot of students in high school, a reduced assignment. We cannot reduce those assignments. They have to meet those same academic standards as any other student. We can't alter testing or assessment methods, again, unless accessibility is an issue. So if the exam is a multiple choice question, then that's what it's going to be for all of the students. We can't affect the academic integrity of a course in any way. We can't alter the course or the coursework, like lower the academic standards or the program requirements. A lot of the program requirements are for accreditation and certification requirements. And so those requirements are requirements that all students have to meet. And we can't change the modality of assignments unless accessibility is an issue. And I'll add, we can't change the modality of a course either, because that fundamentally alters the course. So next, yes. So these are just a few comparisons of high school and college, not specifically disability related. Some of these are just general. As you can see, in high school is mandatory and it's free. The time is structured by the teachers, heavily structured by the teachers. The students might need money for special purchases or events or field trips or things like that. And in high school, the teachers and the parents monitor progress and attendance, and they're able to work together on that. In college, higher education and post-secondary education is voluntary and it is expensive. The time management falls on the student. The instructors are not going to be double checking, hey, did you get this assignment done? Did you turn this in? That's completely on the student. That's a big difference. The students need money to meet the basic needs of food and shelter and things like that, and paying tuition and books. And students are responsible for progress here at the collegiate level. So exams in high school are usually frequent and they might cover smaller amounts of materials. They might be every 3 weeks or every 6 weeks. Makeup tests and retests are often available. The teachers are usually willing to work with the students on that. Reviews might be given with important concepts. Usually before a big exam in high school, there's a big review or a study day or something like that. And mastery is often reproducing what you were taught. Whereas in college, those exams might be more infrequent and include larger amounts of material, and they might be cumulative. You might have one exam in a class, or the exam, there might be a midterm and a final, and that's it. Retests might not be available, and makeups are arranged at the professor's discretion. And so it's important to be present at exams and be there for that test date. Students are responsible for organizing materials and studying on their own. There's not usually review days or study days before an exam. That falls on the student. And mastery is usually applying what you've learned. It might not be just reviewing and reproducing what you were taught, but actually applying those concepts. All right, grades. Homework grades can help bolster those grades in high school. Oftentimes in high school, the first or the low test scores might be dropped. Students can usually graduate with D's or higher, and usually in high school, effort counts. Teachers can make that determination with grades of you tried really hard, we're going to grade based on that. Whereas in college, tests and major assignments are typically the largest grades and count for the most in courses. That's usually a surprise to students. Sometimes it might be hard to recover from low test grades. So again, that studying is really important. Grades must meet the college's expectations, and overall, at least a 2.0 or a C average or higher is expected at tech. Other programs like engineering might have a higher GPA expectation. And in college, results count. All right, we'll open it up to if you guys want to drop your questions in the Q&A. This is our contact information if you have any other questions, but we'll look at those Q&A questions.
Kim, just something, what do you think is the biggest misconception about accommodations at this level, at the college level?
Yeah, so there's a few. I'm writing a dissertation on that. Um, no, but the accommodations automatically transfer to college. We get that so often. Students come to us and they're like, "Oh, I thought that my 504 would transfer. I was told that my 504 would transfer." That is a huge misconception. It does not transfer. We can accept that documentation, but it does not automatically transfer. The other misconception is that those accommodations, kind of along with that, that the accommodations that are on the 504 IEP are automatically going to apply to college. And that is not true. Those accommodations are going to look very differently and they are going to function differently at the collegiate level.
Just a reminder that if you raise your hand for a question, we would ask that you go ahead and put that in the Q&A, which is usually found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Another question would be if they are in the middle of the semester and realize maybe they want to try, they had maybe ADD, ADHD accommodations in high school, they get into college, they get halfway through the semester and they realize, oh no, I need help now. What is the situation when dealing with something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Students can apply for services at any time in the semester. We accept applications year round. Now there is a little bit of a time frame to receive those. Of course, the student has to finish that application, and then we have to meet with the student, and then the student has to meet with their professors, and then those accommodations, and then a week happens, and then those accommodations would apply. So, students can request their accommodations up into about the last 2 weeks of classes. But even, the last week of classes, students can still apply. They would just be for accommodations for the next semester. That's a great question. I've also seen a repeating question, if you don't mind me addressing that as well, for extra time on exams. That's been a repeated question. Lots are asking if that is an accommodation. Yes, extra time on exams is an accommodation that most students will get here at college. Additional time on assignments, things like projects and homework and things like that do not apply. So common accommodation is students might get an extra day for assignments in high school. That does not apply at the collegiate level. Students are expected to meet those deadlines that are on each syllabus, but absolutely extra time on timed exams. So if all students were given an hour, the student, depending on what their documentation is and their disabilities are, we would discuss that with the student. But yes, extra time on exams is a very common accommodation.
And Kim, they're still asking about signing up. They can still sign up now, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And if your student has already been to orientation, then we will do an intake meeting virtually with them, hopefully before school starts, but we'll even meet with them, maybe after they've moved in. Requesting accommodations can happen any point in the semester. We encourage students to do that maybe a few days before school starts. But a lot of students request their accommodations the first week of classes as well.
Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we will continue. Our time is up. We're going to continue to answer questions that are still in the Q&A. You still have a few minutes, but we also want to thank our presenters so much today and those working behind the scenes for helping us answer these questions for you parents. Obviously, there's the contact information for Kim and their office. Please make sure that you have a copy of this. I will also remind everyone that a copy of this presentation, along with this video recording, will be sent to the email address that you used when you signed up for this webinar. And just a reminder is our final webinar series installation will be next week, August the 5th, with finishing touches. Your PFR team will be here to kind of guide you and answer questions that you may have as we roll up into move in the first day of classes. Again, there's our email address there along with Student Disability Services. I'm going to go ahead and leave that up for the moment, but we are going to finish up these Q&As, and we just ask that you share this information with those that you feel would enjoy it. Again, one more time, thank you, Kim and team, for being here with us today. we'll give you a couple of more minutes to finish up these questions, and then we'll end our webinar. So thanks again, everyone.